Welcome back. I hope you found that stimulating. I know Fern and Emma Jelliot over there have started a chapter. Their question on that table was, should artists go on strike? And they're about to man the barricades, and they need some recruits. So a bit later in the evening, they'll be coming round to sign you up. We will be wanting to, there's no feedback session or anything like that, but we do want to just capture what you've been scribbling. So a bit later, we'll be picking up the pieces of paper. Again, if there's anything that occurs to you through the next session as a question to pose or a statement to make, record it on your sheet or on a spare sheet. I'm really excited and gratified to bring Ned and Ed together. Ed's just shared with me and Ned's just shared with me the last time they met was 1997 in Prague. Do you want to say how
Ned was running a gun running operation in Prague. And I fell in love with a Russian spy, and I called myself Ned, he called himself Ed. And I haven't told him this, but I've been having his expenses from Aberystwyth University for the last 10 years. And I've got no intention of paying him back.
So, now we've cleared the air about that.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
I suppose the intrigue of bringing you together is twofold. One is just to reflect on equally both of your creative journeys, which are extraordinary. And I'm looking perhaps over the next half hour or so for just some points of contact, even though you've not been talking together since 1997.
So we haven't got bored.
Besides a lot of catching up, there might be things that trigger a bit of debate between the two of you. Ed, you're known for a spate of plays in the late 90s, and were really keen, and it'd be interesting news for the audience that you're returning to a shed to write a play in much the same way, I understand, which is a sort of bombardment or
just start.
Just start. But beyond that, the company, translated into Fiction Factory. The rest isn't quite history, because Fiction Factory has had a fantastic slate, and most recently, Hinterland has been probably occupying 2/3 of your life?
More, yeah.
And I'll come back to that creative journey and ask you a bit more about that. Ned, very usefully, in a book of the year in 2012, managed to relate the phases of his life to countries where you've operated, whether that's Salamanca, Russia, Aberystwyth, which is a country, not a... over that period, there's an intellectual journey, which I suppose I saw as somebody writing about Orwell to somebody writing about Waldo, and then an awful lot of critical commentary and continued intervention into our contemporary world. Could both of you just offer me something on your creative journeys? I mean, if I turn to you, Ed, how do you consider it now?
Exactly as it was when I started off. I mean, I used to find, I didn't always want to be Welsh. I ran away from the place, and then I fell in love with it again, and then I started writing about it. But then I found out that Wales wasn't really in the world like the rest of the UK was, Scotland, Ireland, and the rest of Europe was. So then I started finding that silence was embarrassing, so shameful even. So, you know, a rag bag of actors and me got together and did a few, you know, quite a few plays, basically, and the thing that just to get out into the world and prove that we could live, love and die like everybody else, that we were dignified enough for tragedy, funny enough at comedy, and we knew where to fuck. So, right. You know, that's it. I can't say I ever learned to do the third thing. But essentially, you know, love, sex and death in the context of Wales, right. In any language.
Right. And
I failed.
You're working on all three?
I'm still working on it in
not
mid-career.
The middle one,
Mid-career, yeah. Plenty to say.
And how important has it been to be working with that group of people? I mean, I was looking at a clip of House of America the other night and just seeing DC Matthias
Richard
in that earlier. I mean, has it been important to have a group of actors around you, or Mark Evans as a filmmaker?
They're all friends, they're all collaborators. And at the end of the day, you know, that as Ian touched upon, I mean, we come from a generation where, you know, anything good in Wales happened despite its institutions, not because of them. And in many ways, you know, that's very difficult to, if you've built yourself an imagined career, if you've made any money or not. You know, breaking that chain of just getting up and doing it, part entrepreneur, part idiot, part fool, part imaginer, and then you hang out with people who are equally stupid, and then stupid in other continents. It's just an argument for making marks, an argument for going out there, an argument for proving that we just all we've ever wanted to do is be part of the debate. If there's a debate happening in the world, and God, we need a debate. I just wanted to make sure that you know, in any accent, in any language, the idea that Wales should be at that table has been important. So exporting a sense of not just a definitive version of Wales. I mean, a version in collaboration with others at different periods of their lives. Some people don't want to be on that journey anymore. A lot of the people you've mentioned, they are lifelong friends and they go through phases. So what I like about collaborating with them is, and others, some of the people who've passed away, is that you know, it's kind of they throw it, I catch it, or I catch it, they throw it. There's a kind of an ease to it. Yeah. You know, you've got to have hips rather than straight lines. Concrete is terrible. We're paid to imagine. When the imagination isn't any good, then you have to go back to the drawing board.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that makes a lot of sense to the way people also create work in the room this afternoon. Ned, your writer's existence or thinker's existence is a much more solitary sort of affair.
Yes.
But
there's also a journey.
There is also a journey.
Yes. I forget who said you live life forwards, but you understand it backwards or try to understand it backwards. So I suppose, like a lot of people, I was driven by forces I didn't entirely understand. When young, my main connection with Wales was that I was brought up in a Welsh-speaking family, largely in England, Germany in the immediate post-war period, Switzerland, educated for about 2 or 3 years in Llanlleth in Wales, but I was put into the learners group because I was illiterate in Welsh, although I spoke it at home, and to children on the bus and so on. But so that was my connection, and of course the sort of wider family in Wales, which I saw from time to time. Now it can be told I have to acknowledge the Arts Council, and I hope they won't ask for their money back. I think I've observed it happens quite often. When I had small children, you think, what do you want to transmit? And at that point, I was a journalist in London. I'd worked as an academic in Spain and at Moscow State University. and I was editing a magazine in Russian for the British government from London. And I saw there were some bursaries.
Right.
And this is how to work the system.
Then.
No, now it's probity has triumphed. But my tutor, when I was at university at Oxford, was John Bailey, who was married to Iris Murdoch. So I said, I think I'd like to write a novel, you know. Would you just give me a letter of support? So
that's a pretty impressive letter of support.
This secured me a bursary, maybe 6 months or 3 months.
We didn't look into track record at the time.
Well,
clearly not.
I had no novels to my name, and I still don't have any novels to my name. But I came back and wrote the little red book of the 1970s, The Welsh Extremists. This was not an intention to deceive. I was set on becoming Tolstoy, you know. But the situation in Wales and my rediscovery of things led me to do that.
So give us a flavour of your book, because there's a way of reading The Welsh Extremist, which is about these figures in their times coming to certain views.
In a way, this book in Welsh and The Welsh Extremists in English are kind of bookends. I hope they're not absolutely final ends.
Right.
But in that attempt to understand yourself retrospectively, I see myself as sort of being driven by the need to mediate between cultures.
Right.
So the Welsh Extremist was rediscovering what was already in me, but through literature, and conveying that to an English-speaking audience. And what this book is, in a way, trying to convey the worlds, Buddha's worlds, and there are linguistic worlds, essentially, of 4 years in Spain, the years dealing with Russia, one of which was spent, and talking about the old Soviet Union. And the immediate post-war years when I was a child in Germany. I'm going to read it in the original, but we have a translation coming. I'm 10 years old, and my father is a minor denazification judge, but we are the only British family in a town in the Ruhr. And I'm not allowed to go to German schools. There is no British school, so I have tutors coming in the morning and to teach me, through German, of course, and to teach me German as well. And then in the afternoon, I play with German children on the...
And you went back to Recklinghausen?
I went back when I was writing the book and discovered all kinds of fascinating things, which you have to read the book.
Okay. Give us a flavour.
This is the opening paragraph. Rwy'n chwilio am ferch fach tua 10 oed. Mariana, ia, dyna oedd ei henw. Draw yn hen pella twnnel y cof, a stryd heilog lydan, a mynd ar gen fy meic newydd. Rwy'n pwyso pedal am yn ôl, ac mae'r beic yn breicio'n sydyn. Y funud nesaf dacw hi, ei gwallt brawn yn blethen dena, yn troi o gwmpas ei ffen yn gylchoedd fel coran. Wrth i mi ail gychwyn, mae hi'n rhedeg ar fôl, yn rhedeg ac yn gwthio'r beic, yn gyflymach nac yn edreddu bedlo, ac yna neidio ar y cefn, ac mae'r ddau ohonom yn chwerthin. Tynwch ein llun, newch chi, Marianne ac Edward yn 10 oed ac yn cael hwyl. Elperfeg, Recklinghausen, Ruhrgebiet, Nordrhein-Westfalen, Britische Zone, 1947, 1947. And then the rest of that first chapter is trying to relive what one thinks was one's childhood experience. I wrote that first chapter without doing the research in newspapers and so on, which I subsequently did, which comes later in the book. And of course, Recklinghausen, the area we lived, was the sunlit streets, but just down the road, the ruins began, the blackened ruins, the carpet bombing, and as you went from Recklinghausen into Dortmund and Essen, whole square miles were just blackened ruins from the carpet bombing. And the chapter finishes with having to move from Recklinghausen, where I had got on very well with the children, because my father is promoted to a job in Cologne, and I'm going to be sent to a boarding school. Yn gynnar yn 1948, cafodd fy nhad yr hafiad I swydd newydd o fewn yr un gyfundreth yn Cologne. Roedd popeth a fi'n newid, a byddwn ni yn mynd I ysgol breswyl yn y Swistir. Yn ddian ar ôl ni symud tŷ, dyma fy mam yn derbyn llythyr gan fam Marian. Tebyg bod y llythyr yn gofyn am ryw gymorth neu gymwynas. Gyda'r llythyr o Recklinghausen, dath llun yr oedd Marianne wedi dynnu yn dwt ac yn ofalus gan ddefnyddio papur trasio. Yn y llun yr oedd beic, rwy'n cofio, ac oedd I tan o'r cwpled, awch yn der fferna, hadych dich gerne, agos at fy nghalon dy fod ti'n bell. Mae'r pellter heddiw yn bellter oes, a'r unig lun sydd gen I bellach yw llun yn fy mhen Marianne, on y tŷ a fi ar beic. Ac rwy'n hoff iawn o'r darlun, efo mod yn gweld y cefndir yn dywyllach na'r stryd heilog oedd yno pan oeddem yn blant. Yn y cefndir roedd yr adfeilion yn ymestyn o Abertawe a Coventry draw I Dortmund, Hamburg a Dresden, a heibio'r gwersychoedd myd yn fforestydd Gwlad Pwyl I Warszawa a Stalingrad. Ond roedd e'n cefnennu at hynny I gyd Marianne, am ymlaen mae'n llygyd yn edrych, rydym yn gwthio'r beic yn dechrau ar y daith ac yn chwerthin. Yeah. So there I sort of distanced myself, and if I was distancing myself and writing this today, I would say with great feeling and great anger, I think, that leaving aside the British class wars and the internecine conflicts in the British political parties, it is a tragedy and a breach of solidarity with the other peoples of Europe that I find it very hard to forget what has happened in that referendum, because though a child, I belong to that generation that said we will do something different.
Yeah, that's sort of where I want to bring both of you, because I want to talk about the international moment that Wales finds itself in now. And I want to talk about it via your two pieces of, well, not creation, but where you've creatively been active fairly recently. The first thing is to ask you, Ed, just to reflect on the international success of Hinterland.
I mean, we wouldn't have done Hinterland unless we'd had money from Europe. They gave us £1 million. So now that we're out of Europe, that funding disappears. So, you know, the hard yards are that it's disastrous that we've left the EC, just purely from filmmaking, television making, fiction, whatever. That's a lot of money. You have to apply. The applications are this high, and they're you know, they're tricky, and you have to be patient. But you know, we were citizens of Europe since 1993, and that's been taken away. But also, if you raise money, whether you're a writer or a visual artist of any kind, you know that you have to go out, and you know that you have to compare and contrast and see how real countries. Wales is really still, to me, an imagined country rather than a real one. But you know, let's for now just regard it as a country. You know, you always listen to and see what's happening in other countries. Europe's always been a crucible to us. When we did plays, we used to get funded a lot. Our fixer was in Amsterdam, then we'd play in anywhere from Copenhagen to Berlin. So it was part of the way we'd fund ourselves. Similarly then, we've sold hinterland to Europe, and it's a normal sale. There's nothing unusual about it. The only unusual thing is that we were determined to make it as lo-fi as it possibly could be, so it wouldn't be like just another, to me it's a cop drama, but to me it's just a Welsh thing, a Welsh cop drama. The landscape is as much of an interest to me as DCI Matthias is. But the thing is that we'd have to make it our own way to prove that somewhere in the northwest of Europe there's another language, I think, and it's like the UK, but not quite as you know it. That's about as sophisticated as it gets.
Looking at it from the outside, that feels like the really surprising thing. I mean, it's surprising that the BBC runs eventually with the Welsh version, or the version which mixes the two languages in the way that...
Yeah, but funny, I mean, nobody, the SLC and BBC hadn't worked together for 20 years. We have to, one of the things that I do want to say is that we, whether you call cultural industries, whether we call ourselves artists, imaginers, fools, concrete mixers, I don't care. But, there's got to be a greater scaffolding between, if there is a cultural industry, that the Welsh bit of that needs to speak to the English bit of it. Thankfully after Hinterland, SLC and BBC are collaborating on dramas. But in order to move forward in a new world, every institution needs to be talking to each other, and every institution needs to be forging new links, individually or collectively, with any links we have with other countries in Europe. We can't just wait and see.
But for you, it was not a surprise that the texture of Hinterland, the makeup of it linguistically, was an easy sell. Not an easy sell, but what was not questioned. The fact that, for me, the intense locality of Hinterland is something which means that it's not a Marks and Spencer's product that you're just trying to sell into a generic.
Yeah, I know.
And this sort of particularity seems to be a feature. So to talk international now is to talk intense particularity.
But also we had to make it timeless. We had to make sure that the budget, we can always say that we could do things with more money, but we had to make the budget our friend. In other words, how are we going to design this? We had to pick a precinct where we believed that roughly the cops would speak Welsh, partly Welsh. That had to be Aberystwyth. The stories had to come from the landscape, or feel that. So we couldn't have Mr. Big running a drug operation and, something which would be more urban. Second thing is that we wanted to make it timeless, or, in our words, as mythic as we could. So basically, it's just like David Carradine in Kung Fu in 1970, walking across an endless mountain. Instead of sand in big boots, it was just Matthias in big boots, the existential thing of that. Yeah. The third thing then is that there would be no contemporary references, and we'd never shoot Lidl, So if you ever see, there's not one...
I think you quoted saying you can't fall in love in Lidl.
No, you can't fall in love in Lidl, no. And then,
I'm sure
you could, I'm sure you could.
Would want to
not in my lexicon, you can't.
If you can have Volkswagens, why can't you have Lidl?
Yeah, but we tend to be in the Volkswagens looking out. So just those simple things. Right. Simple things, you just design it with an inch of its life, and then imagine how we'd shoot it. We had a Polish DOP, a collaborator, Mark, who did the first film I ever did, House of America, and we just bundled around, and we weren't heavily exact. Because we had so many pieces of money and nobody had more than 40%, none of the exact had to turn up. So by accident, if we'd done a complete pig's ear of it, we'd have to take responsibility. And also, if it succeeded, then we take the credit. Not all the broadcasters see it that way, but
I'm going to persist a little bit with this idea of how the local has become international currency, and how maybe it's a way through the current crisis or whatever. Ned, reflect on planet. I mean, the Welsh internationalists.
I see what
a
you're
particular
saying,
moment, but you abandoned it with the devolution.
I'm sceptical about there being what you might call an indigenous core, and then something international. I mean, because of, the whole concept of Celts and so on, minorities play whatever cards are put in their hand, and so from the time of Matthew Arnold and so on, the Celtic card enabled us to set up departments of Welsh in the university and do various things, because he said the Celts have imagination and so on. And so there was a kind of insistence on the unique indigenous qualities, which looked at from the big urban centres was an area of darkness and refuge. Sometimes people like David Jones and so on could imagine life was rather romantic and so on. But, I mean, everywhere you look, cultures mixed. We're mixing. If you look at the Welsh language poets of the 20th century, you have people who forebears were all Welsh speakers, and you have people like Wilder Williams, Bobby Jones, who learnt the language as children, and more recently people learnt it in schools and so on. You had movement of populations. If you look at the Middle Ages, there were Norman French, very nearly became the court language in Gwynedd and would probably throughout Wales. So Welsh literature by Welsh people in the Renaissance is partly in Latin, partly in Welsh, partly in English, partly in French. So what you have is a unique amalgam which changes, and it seems to me that what Hinterland is doing is showing an amalgam that is not, as it were, playing that card of strangeness, but of strange familiarity that people, at least within a fairly wide spread of cultures, can both appreciate an element of difference and an element of similarity. Now, in the promotion of literature from Wales, whether in Welsh or in English, one has the European circuit. There are points of similarity that you can compare with authors in the great novel of Russia or wherever, and you are understood and so on. When you go further afield, it gets more exploratory. We had a translator with us for 3 months who was translating Untouchable from Bengali into English, and you are dealing with worlds so extreme that it's very well worth doing, but it's not can't be done on the same basis. It still seems exotic in a kind of.
But let me go back to the political moment when Planet had been running. There's a devolution vote. It's lost, and you decide the internationalist sort of has to retreat at this point.
I think the international element was there from the start, but when the South Wales Echo reviewed it saying Planet, which should be called Parish, I decided to put this
Parish, the Welsh internationalist.
To put this, I should have put Parish. Yes, Planet was a little bit over the top as a title, but it was it was an attempt not to say, we'd had the Welsh Review, we'd had the Anglo-Welsh Review, we'd had Welsh this or that, and I think I was really saying what you were saying earlier, that you don't need to say you're Welsh. If you're Welsh, do it.
If I wanted to sort of pull something out of both of you, busy making work, you with that passion view of the crisis that is now and the regrets you might have about it. But I suppose I wanted to ask in this start of the new year, reasons to be cheerful. Is this a possibility now?
With enough LSD, I reckon. Wales is good for mushrooms still, apparently.
Oh, right,
but,
okay. There's quite a few in, some of those close-up shots.
It's September or October we need to look out for.
Yeah. Is that why there were 6-month shoots?
Yeah, they were. No, I mean, it's difficult to be optimistic, but you have to. I mean, the position, if you're Welsh, the position's always desperate but not serious. And I think, nothing will change. And I do think that...
Nothing will change?
No, I mean, one of the things we can do is just imagine something else. Something that Ian said earlier on about mythologizing, and, I won't go into that, but... there is a plan abroad to kind of build, like if you build it, they will come. Don't know what that thing is yet and what form it'll take. But that would be hugely optimistic and not imagined yet. But if we say it's going to happen, then, there's a chance that it may happen. And then that may be something amazing. It might take 60 years, it might take 50 years, it might take 5 years. But it's kind of as nonsensical and magic and hopeless as if you build it, they will come. And I think looking at from where I am now, I think as humbly as I can, that's all we can do. A kind of a version of that, if we want to.
But you have a sense through the success of Hinterland that the currency passes. I mean, it is speaking to more diverse groups of people.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things, the voices. I mean, I was saying to somebody earlier on. I mean, that with pardon everybody who's under 30 here. I'm not aware of a great wave. There were, when I was 27, I was one of 50 angry people shouting. I mean, I think I'm 55 now. And I expect a younger generation to really stone me and boo me and get off. We shouldn't be on these panels anymore. You get honorary fellowships and professorships by 55. Either they think you're going to die very soon, or you get to an age where, if you're given an award, they'll clear off. I mean, I'm desperate that there's that anger, that form, that shape, that search for shape, form, half a career, half a way of feeding your kids, that you can completely out-imagine us. Yeah. And what a lot of us are seeing is that the people we're regarding as young talent are, approaching 40. And I'm speaking in terms of film and television, and sometimes writing that I'm aware of, theatre writing I'm aware of, that seems to be, somebody's stolen a generation here somewhere. Right. Because talent is not emerging, in the way that it did when we all had to fight tooth and nail to just make something happen. And, I don't want that to be necessarily seen as negative. They're probably out there, but the systems are different. We had a grant. We had a grant for them to go to college. And I was the first person in my family to have a degree. So it was kind of in the political context in which all this work happened meant that, in Thatcher's Britain, you either kind of got out of here completely, or you did it. You did it, with your mates, and that for me has never gone away. That anger and resilience and good as gold, dull as hell mentality. Yeah,
Ned, reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah, I think there are one or two. In the Welsh language, I think something that is slowly transformative is the establishment of Coleg Cymraeg Cenedlaethol, because now in higher education you have a wide range of subjects, including bits of medicine and bits of engineering, taught through Welsh. I go to some of the conferences, which previously, if you had a conference on to do with German studies, it would inevitably be in English. It would not focus on the particular contacts that there have been between Wales. So and I think this creates a kind of a readership as well of a different kind in Welsh. The numbers are small and the developments are slow, but I connect there's a new fortnightly, not fortnightly, 3 times a year, literary newspaper, which you may have seen, on Pedwar Gwynt. I don't think that could exist really with its wider spread into philosophy, politics, books, not just literary books, but books and ideas. I think the first 2 numbers are really very encouraging, giving London Review of Books a good run for its money, right, in a Welsh dimension. And I think I connect those 2 things, right. So that's in Welsh. I think in the novel in English, certainly one has seen, by now well-known names like Owen Shears, Canon Jones, carrying, of course, the moment they have a degree of success, they disappear from Welsh publishers. If they were ever published in Wales, they are taken over, and this is a problem of the publishing weakness in Wales, that they don't bring money back into the publishing scene. Nevertheless, I think in a way that was perhaps not true earlier because of devolution, because of greater cultural self-confidence in Wales, these people go out into the world as Welsh people and are succeeding in some way, although I would like to see this sort of formalized more in terms of, having courses in foreign universities on distinct Welsh literature in English and so on, in the way...
Both of you, in different bits I've read over the last few days, have mentioned this issue of confidence. Where on the barometer do you see Wales now? Is the confidence going? Is it?
Just as it always has been, desperate but not serious. That's the only way it can survive.
Yeah.
It's idiotic to feel confident if you're Welsh. Yeah. It's just like it's a contradiction in terms. You don't really exist. It's an idea. But it's being Welsh. It's
but the fact that confidence in that measure's shifted from the rugby team to the football team is good in your book, or
great? It's the national theatre of many voices. All made up, fragments, bits and pieces, rewritten, palimpsest. Take it up, mix it up, mash it up, send it out, and it might mean something.
And where do you both go from here? You're going to a shed to pick up
I built a shed. I'm going to write a play by the 1st of March. It's a David's Day.
And Ned?
Welsh.
I have a book that I've been writing for some time.
Is it a novel?
No,
right, okay. So we might still have to be claiming.
I've been putting in for a bursary for a novel.
Okay.
I want to destroyed the old files.
I want to thank Ed and Ned, the Ed and Ned show, reprised from 1997, back to the gun running and other things. But it's been fascinating to hear your takes on things. For the next half hour, there's drinks and conviviality before we come back and celebrate our Creative Wales Awards. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Ed and Ned. Thank you. Really good.